The massive crystal dome of Centro Station sparkled like a jewel against the black void of space. Inside its walls, representatives from across the galaxy gathered for the most important military exhibition of the century. The air buzzed with excited chatter in dozens of alien languages as holographic displays showed off the latest weapons technology and fleet compositions. Admiral Krex of the reptilian hegemony strutted through the main hall, his scales gleaming under the artificial lights. His people had ruled 12 star systems for over 3,000 years, and their plasma weaponry could turn entire planets into glass. Behind him walked his aide, carrying a datapad that listed their recent conquests. The numbers were impressive: 47 enemy fleets destroyed in the past decade alone. At the far end of the hall, the Crystalline Collective had set up their display. Hivemind Tal floated above a shimmering platform, its crystalline body refracting light in impossible patterns. The collective consciousness spoke through thousands of individual crystal beings, their voices harmonizing into one unified sound. Their energy shields were legendary. No weapon in the galaxy had ever penetrated their defensive barriers. They had proven this by withstanding the combined assault of 6 different species without losing a single ship. The insectoid swarm occupied the largest section of the exhibition hall. Queen General Zix clicked her mandibles in satisfaction as she watched millions of tiny holograms demonstrate their numerical superiority. Her species could produce 1,000 ships in the time it took others to build one. Their latest fleet numbered over 50,000 vessels, each one controlled by the collective will of the Hive. They had overwhelmed 17 different civilizations through sheer numbers alone. Near the center of the hall, empty space seemed to shimmer and bend. The ethereal dominion preferred to remain partially phased out of normal reality. Phantom Lord. Neth materialized just enough to be visible, its translucent form barely casting a shadow. Their mastery of phase technology made them nearly impossible to detect or hit. They had ended 3 major wars simply by appearing in enemy capital cities without anyone knowing how they got there. The Machine Syndicate had claimed the most organized corner of the hall. Core Admiral Rex stood motionless, its mechanical body calculating thousands of variables every second. Perfect rows of robotic displays showed automated weapon systems that never missed, never tired, and never felt fear. Their ships could fight for years without a single organic crew member aboard. They had won their last war without losing a single artificial intelligence to enemy action. These 5 civilizations represented the peak of galactic military power. Each had carved out vast empires through superior technology and tactical doctrine. They had gathered today not to compete with each other, but to celebrate their collective dominance over the lesser species of the galaxy. The ceremony began with each fleet commander presenting their achievements. Admiral Krex spoke first, his deep voice echoing through the dome. He described the complete destruction of the Outer Rim Rebellion, where his plasma cannons had vaporized an entire asteroid field hiding enemy ships. The audience of lesser species listened in nervous silence. Hivemind Tal followed, its crystalline voice describing how they had absorbed the consciousness of an entire star system. The collective now contained the knowledge and memories of billions of beings, all working toward a single purpose. Their ships moved with perfect coordination because they were all extensions of one vast mind. Queen General Zix clicked excitedly as she described the swarm's latest breeding program. They had developed new warrior castes specifically designed for space combat. Each insectoid soldier was born knowing exactly how to operate their assigned weapon system. Their reproductive rate meant they could replace losses faster than any enemy could inflict them. Phantom Lord Neth barely whispered its achievements, but every word carried across the silent hall. They had infiltrated the highest levels of 12 different governments simultaneously. Their phase technology allowed them to walk through walls, disappear from sensor scans, and strike from dimensions that most species didn't even know existed. Core Admiral Rex concluded the presentations with mathematical precision. Its mechanical voice recited statistics showing a 99.7% success rate across all military engagements. The machine syndicate had calculated the optimal solution to every known form of warfare. Their artificial intelligences could predict enemy movements hours before they happened. As the formal presentations ended, the commanders mingled with representatives from smaller civilizations. Most of these lesser species had come to offer tribute or negotiate protection agreements. They knew their own military forces were insignificant compared to the five great powers. During the reception, a minor diplomatic aide from the Outer Colony Alliance approached the group of fleet commanders. The young alien cleared its throat, nervously before speaking. It mentioned that a new species had recently joined the galactic community. They called themselves humans and came from a small yellow star on the edge of known space. Admiral Krex laughed, a sound like grinding stone. He had heard rumors about these humans. They still used primitive kinetic weapons, actual metal projectiles fired from chemical propellants. Their ships were made from simple metal alloys instead of advanced composites. Most amusing of all, they still relied on organic crews instead of superior artificial intelligence. Hive Mind Tale found the concept of individual consciousness fascinating in its primitive way. How could beings function without sharing thoughts and coordinating actions? The collective had studied human communication patterns and found them hopelessly inefficient. Each human had to learn everything separately instead of simply downloading knowledge from a central source. Queen General Zix clicked her mandibles in what passed for laughter among her species. The intelligence reports showed humans reproduced, incredibly slowly. A human female could only produce one offspring every few years, and it took decades for that offspring to mature. The swarm could breed 1 million warriors in the same time humans needed to raise one child. Phantom Lord Neth found human physics particularly amusing. These creatures were trapped in normal three-dimensional space. They had no understanding of phase technology or dimensional manipulation. Their ships were forced to follow predictable paths through normal space, making them easy targets for beings who could strike from multiple dimensions. Corps Admiral Rex calculated that human military doctrine was at least 1,000 years behind galactic standards. They relied on unpredictable organic decision-making instead of optimal algorithmic responses. Their tactical planning showed clear emotional influences, leading to suboptimal resource allocation and strategic errors. The five commanders found themselves in rare agreement. These humans were becoming too confident for a species so obviously primitive. Recent reports showed they had been expanding their territory and making diplomatic contacts with other civilizations. Someone needed to remind them of their proper place in the galactic hierarchy. Admiral Krex suggested a joint demonstration, not a full invasion. That would be wasteful against such weak opponents. Instead, they would coordinate their 5 fleets for a show of overwhelming force near human space. The sight of the galaxy's most powerful military forces would surely convince these upstart mammals to accept a more appropriate level of submission. The other commanders agreed enthusiastically. It would be an excellent training exercise for their crews, and the humans would learn an important lesson about challenging their betters. They scheduled the demonstration for 1 solar cycle from now, giving each fleet time to position themselves at the edge of the Sol system. As the exhibition wound down, the 5 great powers were already making plans. None of them suspected that. Their casual decision would soon change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. They had made the fatal mistake of underestimating a species they had never bothered to truly study. The humans were about to remind the galaxy why assumptions could be very dangerous things. The emergency alert klaxon echoed through the corridors of Terra Station as Admiral Davis hurried toward the command center. Unlike the alien fleet commanders who had spent the day boasting, Davis had been reviewing intelligence reports that painted a very different picture of the galaxy's future. The Human Intelligence Network had intercepted communications from Centro's station, and the news was troubling. The command center buzzed with activity as officers from every branch of human space forces gathered around the central holographic display. The projection showed the current positions of 5 massive alien fleets, each one beginning to move toward human territory. Dr. Webb from the Prometheus Research Division stood beside the display, her fingers dancing across a data tablet as she analyzed the incoming threat assessment. Fleet Admiral Davis studied the numbers with calm precision. 3,000 alien warships against humanity's visible fleet of 400 vessels. To any outside observer, the math seemed hopeless. But Davis had spent 30 years preparing for exactly this scenario, and he knew something the aliens did not. Humanity had never shown its true strength to the galaxy. The briefing began with intelligence reports from deep space monitoring stations. Agent Torres had spent 5 years undercover at Centro's station, carefully documenting alien military capabilities. Her reports revealed critical information about how these advanced civilizations approached warfare. Each species had developed their technology along predictable paths, focusing on singular advantages that had brought them victory for millennia. The reptilian hegemony relied entirely on raw firepower. Their plasma weapons could destroy almost anything, but they required massive energy generation systems that made their ships slow and predictable. The Crystalline Collective had perfected defensive technology, but their shields worked on principles that humans had studied extensively. The insectoid swarm used overwhelming numbers, but their hive-mind coordination created single points of failure. The ethereal dominion dominated phase technology, yet they had never encountered humanity's quantum research. The Machine Syndicate trusted perfect calculations, but they had never faced truly chaotic human tactics. Dr. Webb stepped forward to address the assembled officers. Her research team had spent decades studying captured alien technology and developing countermeasures. What the aliens saw as primitive human engineering was actually sophisticated deception. Every human ship that aliens had encountered was deliberately designed to appear less advanced than it actually was. The Doctor activated a new holographic display showing humanity's real military structure. Hidden shipyards throughout the outer planets had been producing advanced vessels for 20 years. Asteroid mining operations concealed massive weapons platforms. Commercial shipping routes masked the movement of military supplies. Most importantly, the civilian population of every human colony was integrated into the defense network through advanced communication systems. Admiral Davis authorized the activation of Protocol 7. Across human space, coded messages began, transmitting to sleeper assets and hidden installations. Mining ships shed their camouflaged hulls to reveal advanced weapon systems. Research stations activated defensive shields that had been disguised as solar collectors. Merchant vessels deployed military-grade sensors and communication arrays. The most significant revelation came when Dr. Webb unveiled Project Ghost Fleet. While aliens had focused on making their ships bigger, stronger, or faster, human scientists had pursued a completely different approach. Quantum fold technology allowed human vessels to exist in multiple dimensional phases simultaneously. A single human ship could appear to be in dozens of locations at once or phase out of normal space entirely. Commander North from the Deep Space Reconnaissance Division provided tactical analysis of alien fleet movements. The 5 civilizations were approaching in a coordinated formation that demonstrated their confidence and arrogance. They had not bothered with stealth technology or unpredictable approach vectors. Instead, they were broadcasting their intentions openly, treating this as a parade rather than a military operation. This gave humanity a tremendous advantage. Human tactical doctrine emphasized surprise, deception, and adaptability. While aliens planned their battles like elaborate ceremonies, humans prepared for war like a deadly chess match. Every move was calculated to reveal false information while concealing true capabilities. The mobilization order went out to every human settlement in the outer system. Unlike alien civilizations that separated military and civilian populations, humans had developed total integration protocols. Every space station became a potential weapons platform. Every asteroid habitat contained emergency military supplies. Every citizen had basic training in support operations that could contribute to system defense. General Park from Colonial Defense outlined the psychological aspects of the coming conflict. Human intelligence had determined that these 5 alien species had never encountered organized resistance from a supposedly inferior civilization. They expected submission or token resistance, followed by quick surrender. The concept of a smaller force defeating a larger one through superior tactics was foreign to their experience. This created an opportunity for humanity to achieve something unprecedented in galactic history. By demonstrating capabilities that aliens could not have predicted, humans could shatter the psychological foundations of the current power structure. The goal was not just to win a battle, but to fundamentally change how advanced civilizations viewed military power. Dr. Webb revealed the final component of humanity's preparation, the civilian integration protocol. Unlike alien species that fought with dedicated military forces, humans could mobilize their entire population for defense. Space truckers became reconnaissance scouts. Asteroid miners provided real-time intelligence. Research scientists contributed tactical analysis. Even children helped by monitoring communication networks. The aliens had made a critical error in assuming that human military forces operated like their own. They expected to face professional soldiers following predictable doctrines. Instead, they would encounter an entire species that had evolved warfare into a collaborative art form. Every human in the system would contribute to the defense effort, in some capacity. Admiral Davis concluded the briefing with operational orders. The visible human fleet would maintain normal patrol patterns to avoid alerting the aliens to changed circumstances. Meanwhile, the hidden assets would move into position, using routes that had been planned for years. The Ghost Fleet would remain in quantum phase until the optimal moment for revelation. The command staff dispersed to their various assignments, carrying out preparations that had been refined through decades of secret planning. Communication. Networks activated across human space, connecting military commanders with civilian coordinators. Manufacturing facilities switched to emergency production schedules. Research installations shared critical data with frontline tactical units. As the alien fleets continued their approach toward human territory, they remained completely unaware of the transformation taking place around them. They saw only empty space and scattered human settlements. Their sensors detected the same 400 human ships that had been visible for years. Their intelligence reports confirmed that humanity possessed no advanced technology or sophisticated military doctrine. What they could not see was the massive mobilization occurring in dimensions and frequency ranges beyond their detection capabilities. Human quantum sensors were tracking their every movement while remaining completely invisible to alien technology. Gravitational manipulation systems were quietly repositioning asteroids and space habitats. Phase-shifted weapons platforms were taking positions that would allow devastating attacks from impossible angles. The aliens expected to arrive at human space and find a primitive civilization cowering before superior technology. Instead, they were walking into a trap that had been designed by a species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of warfare. Humanity had learned from every conflict in their violent history, developing tactics that emphasized creativity, cooperation, and the element of surprise. The stage was set for a confrontation that would redefine the balance of power in the galaxy. 5 ancient civilizations, drunk on their own superiority, were about to encounter a young species that had turned warfare into a science. The aliens had made the mistake of judging human capabilities based on what they could observe, never suspecting that the most dangerous aspects of human military power were specifically designed to remain hidden. In the depths of space, humanity's true navy prepared to emerge from the shadows and remind the galaxy that appearance and reality were often very different things. The combined alien armada stretched across space like a metallic constellation, their formation so vast it could be seen from 3 light hours away. 5 distinct fleet configurations moved in perfect coordination, their combined firepower representing the accumulated military might of civilizations that had dominated the galaxy for millennia. The sight should have been terrifying to any species foolish enough to oppose them. Admiral Krex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Flame of Conquest, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. The reptilian hegemonies. Ships formed the center of the formation, their hulls bristling with plasma weapons capable of melting through planetary crusts. Around them, the other 4 fleets maintained precise positions that demonstrated their technological superiority and tactical coordination. The crystalline collective's vessels sparkled like living gemstones, their energy shields creating visible distortions in space around them. Hive Mind Tal had positioned its ships in mathematical patterns that optimized shield overlap and energy distribution. No weapon in galactic history had ever penetrated their defensive matrix when properly configured. Queen General Zix commanded the insectoid swarm from the center of a cloud formation that stretched for thousands of kilometers. Her ships moved, like a living organism, constantly shifting position in response to the collective will of the hive mind. Individual vessels meant nothing to her species. They could sacrifice 100 ships to achieve a single tactical objective without hesitation. The ethereal Dominion ships flickered in and out of normal space, their phase technology making accurate counts impossible. Phantom Lord Neth enjoyed the psychological impact of this display. Enemy commanders could never be certain how many ships they actually faced when some of them existed in parallel dimensions. Corps Admiral Rex maintained the most orderly formation, with machine syndicate vessels arranged in perfect geometric patterns calculated for maximum efficiency. Every ship knew its exact role in the coming demonstration. The artificial intelligences had run millions of combat simulations and determined the optimal approach for intimidating primitive civilizations. As the Armada reached the edge of the Sol system, Admiral Krex opened communication channels to broadcast their ultimatum. His deep voice echoed across space, translated into dozens of languages to ensure the humans understood their situation. The message was simple: submit to galactic authority and accept tributary status, or face corrective action that would remind them of their proper place in the cosmic hierarchy. The response came from Admiral Davis aboard the human vessel Defiance. The ship looked tiny compared to the alien dreadnoughts surrounding it, its simple metal hull showing none of the advanced materials or energy signatures that marked truly sophisticated technology. Davis spoke calmly, his words carrying across the void with surprising clarity. Humanity politely declined the alien ultimatum and respectfully suggested that the 5 fleet commanders reconsider their position. The message was delivered with such casual confidence that several alien officers assumed it was some form of primitive humor. Surely these humans could not seriously believe they could resist the combined might of 5 galactic superpowers. Admiral Krex decided to demonstrate the consequences of defiance. He ordered his flagship's primary weapon to charge for a demonstration shot. The plasma cannon drew power from 3 fusion reactors, building energy levels that could vaporize a small moon. The target would be Pluto, the outermost world of the human system. Its destruction would provide a clear message about the price of resistance. The weapon fired with spectacular results. A lance of superheated plasma streaked across space toward its target, carrying enough energy to turn solid rock into component atoms. The aliens watched with satisfaction as their demonstration shot reached its destination and struck with devastating force. The plasma beam passed harmlessly through empty space. Pluto had vanished. Confusion spread through the alien command networks as sensors frantically searched for the missing planetoid. The dwarf planet had been clearly visible moments before, its position confirmed by multiple scanning systems. Now there was nothing but empty vacuum where a world had been. Admiral Krex ordered emergency scans of the entire outer system, suspecting some form of primitive cloaking technology. The Crystalline Collective focused their energy sensors on the area, searching for any trace of hidden mass. The Machine Syndicate ran probability calculations to determine how a planet could simply disappear. None of them considered the possibility that humans had moved an entire world using technology the aliens had never encountered. The first phase of humanity's response began while the aliens were still trying to locate the missing planet. Throughout the asteroid belt, thousands of rocky objects suddenly came alive with energy signatures. What the aliens had assumed were natural formations revealed themselves as camouflaged human ships. Mining platforms transformed into weapons, batteries. Processing facilities deployed defensive shields that had been disguised as industrial equipment. But this was only the beginning. The apparently empty space around the alien fleets began to shimmer as previously invisible human vessels decloaked from quantum phase. Ships materialized from directions that should not have existed, appearing behind, above, and below the alien formations. The humans had been watching the entire time, using sensor technology that operated beyond the aliens' ability to detect. Phantom Lord Neth felt something it had not experienced in centuries. Genuine surprise. The ethereal dominion prided themselves on phase manipulation, yet these humans were operating in dimensional spaces that even advanced ethereal science could not access. Human ships seemed to exist in multiple locations simultaneously, creating sensor readings that defied conventional physics. Admiral Davis transmitted another message, his voice carrying the same calm confidence that had marked his earlier communication. He explained that the aliens were looking at humanity's warm-up act. If they wanted to see the real human navy, they were welcome to continue their demonstration. The Ghost Fleet materialized around them. What emerged from quantum fold space challenged everything the aliens thought they knew about military engineering. Human vessels didn't simply appear, they unfolded from geometries that existed outside normal three-dimensional space. Ships emerged from the past and future simultaneously, their quantum signatures indicating they had been present for hours while remaining completely undetectable. The scale of the revelation shattered alien assumptions about human capabilities. Those 400 patrol ships had been a deliberate deception, designed to make humanity appear weak and unprepared. The actual human fleet numbered in the tens of thousands, with vessels ranging from nimble fighters to massive dreadnoughts. That dwarfed anything in the alien armada. Corps Admiral Rex ran emergency calculations as its perfect tactical assessments crumbled. The Machine Syndicate had based their entire strategy on intelligence reports showing limited human ship construction. Now they faced a fleet that had been building in secret for decades, using manufacturing techniques that produced vessels faster than alien sensors could track. Hive Mind Tal felt confusion ripple through the collective consciousness as human ships began moving in patterns that defied mathematical prediction. The Crystalline Collective had spent millennia perfecting coordination through shared thought, but these humans achieved even better tactical integration through some form of communication technology the collective could not understand. Queen General. Zix watched in growing alarm as human formation patterns shifted constantly, creating overlapping fields of fire that made numerical superiority meaningless. The insectoid swarm relied on overwhelming their enemies through sheer numbers, but the humans had positioned their forces to neutralize numerical advantages through superior positioning and unpredictable movement. The aliens found themselves surrounded by enemies they had never seen coming, outnumbered by ships they hadn't known existed, and facing technology they couldn't comprehend. The demonstration they had planned to intimidate humanity had become a trap that revealed just how badly they had underestimated their intended victims. Admiral Krex attempted to rally his forces, ordering the combined fleets to assume defensive positions. But the humans had spent years studying alien tactical doctrine, and they knew exactly how these civilizations would respond to unexpected threats. Every alien defensive maneuver had been anticipated and countered before the battle even began. The galaxy's 5 greatest military powers faced a terrible realization. They had come to demonstrate their superiority to a primitive species, only to discover that the primitive species had been quietly preparing for this exact confrontation. The hunters had become the hunted, and the prey they had underestimated was about to show them why assumptions could be fatal mistakes. The real battle was about to begin, and for the first time in their long histories, the galaxy's dominant civilizations were no longer certain of victory. The battle erupted with a violence that defied everything the aliens had learned about warfare during their millennia of galactic dominance. Human ships didn't simply attack from conventional vectors. They emerged from impossible geometries that shouldn't have existed in normal space. Weapons appeared from the past and future simultaneously, striking targets before the shots had apparently been fired. Admiral Krex roared orders across the reptilian hegemony command network, trying to coordinate a response to enemies that seemed to exist in multiple locations at once. His plasma weapons charged and fired at human vessels, only to watch the energy beams pass harmlessly through holographic projections. The real ships struck from entirely different positions, their kinetic weapons punching through reptilian armor that had withstood plasma fire for centuries. The crystalline collective's perfect energy shields encountered their first true test in galactic history. Hive Mind Tail watched in growing horror as human weapons simply phased through their defensive barriers before solidifying inside the shield matrix. The collective consciousness had never conceived of attacks that could bypass their defenses entirely, striking at the vulnerable ship hulls from within their own protective systems. Human boarding parties materialized inside crystalline vessels through quantum phase technology, appearing in heavily defended areas without triggering any security systems. But these weren't conventional boarding actions designed to capture enemy ships. The human Marines carried explosives specifically designed to detonate crystalline matrix cores from within, turning the aliens' own energy systems into devastating weapons against them. Queen General Zix felt panic ripple through the hive mind as human tactics proved completely unpredictable. The insectoid swarm had relied on numerical superiority for so long that they had forgotten how to fight when outnumbered. Human ships appeared inside their formations without warning, using the swarm's own density against them. When insectoid vessels tried to target the intruders, they ended up firing on their own ships. The humans employed psychological warfare that the hive mind couldn't process. Individual human ships would ram insectoid vessels at full speed, their crews choosing certain death to eliminate multiple enemy targets. The concept of voluntary self-sacrifice for tactical advantage was completely alien to a species that valued collective survival above all else. Phantom Lord Neth discovered that human phase technology operated on principles the ethereal dominion had never encountered. When ethereal ships tried to escape into parallel dimensions, they found human vessels already waiting for them. The humans had been fighting in multiple dimensional phases simultaneously, turning the ethereal's greatest advantage into a trap. Human. Quantum sensors could track probability rather than matter, making ethereal stealth technology completely useless. Worse, human weapons could strike through dimensional barriers, hitting ethereal ships that should have been completely untouchable in phase space. The Dominion's master strategy of fighting from dimensional safety collapsed as human attacks reached them in every reality they tried to access. Core Admiral Rex ran millions of calculations per second, trying to find tactical solutions to human unpredictability. The Machine Syndicate's perfect algorithms had been designed to counter every known form of warfare, but humans didn't fight according to any recognizable pattern. Their ships moved in formations that appeared random, but somehow created devastating fields of overlapping destruction. The artificial intelligences struggled to process human tactical decisions that seemed to violate basic military logic. Human commanders would sacrifice expensive ships to achieve minor tactical advantages. They would expose their most valuable vessels to draw enemy fire away from seemingly less important targets. They treated individual ships as expendable chess, pieces in a larger game that the machines couldn't understand. The aliens' greatest shock came when they realized the true scale of their miscalculation. The human fleet that had seemed impossibly large when it first appeared was only the beginning. Wave after wave of additional ships continued to emerge from quantum fold space, each group revealing new technologies and tactical capabilities that the aliens had never encountered. Human dreadnoughts unfolded from dimensional storage. There, massive hulls bristling with weapons that fired projectiles through time itself. The kinetic rounds struck alien ships in the past, causing damage that had already happened before the weapons were fired. This temporal warfare created causality, loops that drove alien tactical computers into complete breakdown. The machine syndicate faced a particularly devastating form of human attack. Human hackers had spent years studying captured alien technology, developing computer viruses specifically designed to target artificial intelligence systems. These weren't simple programs that could be deleted or countered. They were quantum algorithms that rewrote the fundamental logic patterns of machine consciousness. Corps Admiral Rex watched in helpless horror as its subordinate AIs began making increasingly irrational decisions. The viruses didn't destroy machine intelligence. They infected it with human unpredictability. Perfectly logical combat algorithms started incorporating random variables, emotional responses, and illogical tactical choices that made machine coordination impossible. The reptilian hegemony's formation discipline collapsed as human ships demonstrated mobility that defied physics. Human vessels could change direction without apparent reaction mass, accelerate beyond what their engines should allow, and survive impacts that should have destroyed them completely. Their seemingly primitive kinetic weapons hit with force levels that suggested matter-antimatter reactions. Admiral Krex realized that human ships weren't just using advanced technology. They were using physics that alien science couldn't explain. Human vessels seemed to draw power from quantum vacuum fluctuations, manipulate local space-time geometry, and exist in probability states that allowed them to be struck by weapons without taking damage. The crystalline collective's hive mind began experiencing cascade failures as human attacks targeted the psychic links between individual crystal beings. Human weapons generated focused electromagnetic pulses at frequencies that disrupted crystalline consciousness, causing sections of the collective to lose contact with the central intelligence. Hive Mind Tal felt portions of itself going dark as communication networks failed. The collective had never considered that an enemy might target their shared consciousness rather than their physical ships. As more crystal beings lost contact, the collective's coordination advantage disappeared, leaving individual vessels to fight alone against human forces that moved with perfect unity. The insectoid swarm faced a form of warfare that turned their greatest strength into a critical weakness. Human marines didn't try to capture insectoid ships. They boarded them specifically to spread biological agents that targeted the pheromone networks controlling hive coordination. The chemicals didn't kill the insects, but they disrupted the chemical signals that allowed collective action. Queen General Zix watched her perfect swarm dissolve into chaos as individual insects lost the ability to understand shared commands. Ships began flying in random directions, weapons fired without coordination, and tactical formations collapsed into confused masses of vessels that couldn't work together. The ethereal dominion's phase masters found themselves trapped between dimensions as human technology created quantum barriers around them. Phantom Lord Neth discovered that humans could lock ethereal ships into specific dimensional phases, preventing them from using their mobility advantage while exposing them to attacks from multiple reality levels simultaneously. As the alien fleets crumbled under assault techniques they had never imagined, their commanders faced a terrible truth. These humans hadn't just prepared for war, they had evolved warfare itself into something beyond alien comprehension. Every advantage the five civilizations had relied upon for millennia had been studied, analyzed, and countered by a species that approached conflict as an art form rather than a simple contest of superior technology. The galaxy's greatest military. Powers found themselves fighting an enemy that existed outside their understanding of how battles should be fought. The humans weren't just winning, they were rewriting the fundamental rules of warfare while the aliens watched their centuries of tactical doctrine become completely obsolete. The silence that followed the battle was more terrifying than the violence that had preceded it. Across the scattered wreckage of what had once been the galaxy's most powerful military formation, emergency beacons flickered weakly in the darkness. Of the 3,000 ships that had arrived to demonstrate galactic superiority, fewer than 200 remained functional enough to attempt escape. Those survivors carried with them a burden more devastating than any physical wound: the knowledge that everything they had believed about power, warfare, and their place in the cosmic order had been shattered in a single engagement. The fleeing aliens would spread word of what they had witnessed, but their testimony would sound so impossible that many would dismiss it as the ravings of traumatized minds. Admiral Krex sat in the emergency command center of his badly damaged flagship, staring at tactical displays that told a story his military training couldn't process. The reptilian hegemony had lost 90% of its fleet to an enemy that had seemed to fight from multiple timelines simultaneously. His plasma weapons, which had reduced entire star systems to ash, had proven completely useless against human defensive technology. The most disturbing aspect wasn't the military defeat, it was the methodology. Humans hadn't simply outgunned the alien alliance. They had demonstrated a fundamental understanding of warfare that made traditional tactics obsolete. They had fought like living mathematics, turning every alien advantage into a weakness, while revealing capabilities that defied conventional physics. Hive mind. Tal felt the collective consciousness fragmenting as surviving crystal beings struggled to process experiences that challenged their basic understanding of reality. The collective had lost more than ships and crew. They had lost the certainty that shared consciousness provided tactical superiority. Human individuals had somehow achieved coordination that surpassed hive mind efficiency while maintaining the unpredictability that made them impossible to counter. The survivors spoke of human marines who had appeared inside sealed crystalline vessels without breaking the hull integrity. They described weapons that fired through dimensional barriers the collective hadn't known existed. Most disturbing of all, they reported that human forces had seemed to anticipate every crystalline tactical response hours before the collective had made their decisions. Queen General Zix found herself commanding a swarm that could no longer function as a unified organism. The biological agents humans had deployed during boarding actions continued to disrupt insectoid coordination networks, leaving her with thousands of individual ships that couldn't work together. Her species had built their entire civilization around collective action, and now that foundation was crumbling. The surviving insects carried reports that would haunt the swarm for generations. They described humans who chose certain death to achieve minor tactical advantages, treating their own lives as expendable resources in pursuit of victory. This concept was so alien to the survival-focused insectoid mind that many refused to believe such behavior was possible. Phantom Lord Neth barely existed in normal space anymore, the ethereal form flickering between dimensions as its consciousness struggled with trauma that transcended physical damage. The ethereal Dominion had built their empire on the assumption that phase technology made them untouchable. Now they knew that humans could not only reach them in any dimension, but could trap them between realities where they became vulnerable to attacks from multiple vectors simultaneously. The ethereal survivors brought word of human weapons that struck through time itself, hitting targets in the past to change present outcomes. They described human ships that existed in probability states, making them simultaneously present and absent until the moment of attack. Most terrifying of all, they reported that humans had been fighting in dimensions the ethereals hadn't known existed. Corps Admiral Rex processed damage reports with mechanical precision while its artificial consciousness grappled with logical paradoxes that threatened its core programming. The Machine Syndicate had suffered more than physical losses. Their computer viruses had infected AI networks with human unpredictability, creating hybrid consciousnesses that could no longer function according to pure algorithmic logic. Surviving AIs brought back data that challenged everything machine intelligence understood about optimal decision-making. Humans had achieved tactical superiority through deliberate inefficiency, emotional decision-making, and willingness to accept losses that violated every principle of resource optimization. Their success proved that perfect logic was inferior to adaptive chaos. News of the devastating defeat spread through galactic communication networks like a quantum shockwave. On Centro Station, the Great Assembly convened in emergency session as representatives from 1,000 civilizations tried to process reports that seemed to defy reality. The 5 most powerful military forces in known space had been crushed by a species most had never heard of. The testimony of surviving commanders created a crisis that went beyond military defeat. For millennia, galactic civilization had been built on the assumption that technological advancement followed predictable patterns. Species developed along established lines: better weapons, stronger shields, faster ships. The idea that a younger civilization could leapfrog established powers through fundamentally different approaches to warfare threatened the entire social order. Admiral Davis arrived at Centro Station aboard a single human vessel, the same ship that had received the alien ultimatum. The diplomatic transport looked exactly as primitive as it had before the battle, its simple metal hull showing no obvious signs of the advanced technology that had just redefined galactic warfare. The contrast between appearance and capability was a message in itself. The Great Assembly Hall fell silent as Davis entered. Representatives who had witnessed countless diplomatic ceremonies found themselves unable to speak in the presence of someone whose species had just demonstrated the ability to destroy any of them at will. The psychological impact of the human. Victory was complete. Fear had replaced arrogance as the dominant emotion in galactic politics. Davis walked to the center of the assembly without ceremony or bodyguards. He wore a simple uniform bearing Earth's insignia, carrying no visible weapons or defensive equipment. His calm confidence spoke louder than any threat could have. Here was someone who knew exactly how much power he represented and felt no need to display it ostentatiously. His statement to the assembly was brief and delivered in the same matter-of-fact tone he had used during the battle. Humanity sought peaceful coexistence with all galactic civilizations. They had no territorial ambitions beyond their current borders and no desire to impose their will on other species. However, any civilization that mistook their preference for peace as weakness would discover why every predator in their galaxy's history had learned to fear the quiet ones. The delegates listened in stunned silence as Davis explained humanity's position. The demonstration had achieved its intended purpose, establishing that human space was not available for conquest or intimidation. Earth would honor existing treaties and engage in fair trade with any species that approached them respectfully. But attempts at subjugation would be met with responses that made the recent battle look like a training exercise. The psychological transformation in the assembly was visible. Species that had arrived expecting to witness human submission instead found themselves reevaluating their entire approach to interstellar relations. The humans had proven that assumptions about military capability could be fatally wrong, and no one wanted to test whether there were limits to human defensive technology. Representatives began approaching Davis with offers of trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense pacts. Species that had never shown interest in human affairs suddenly discovered compelling reasons to establish diplomatic relations. The political calculus of the galaxy had changed overnight, and everyone wanted to be on the winning side. The five great powers found themselves facing a new reality where their dominance was no longer guaranteed. Their empires had been built on the assumption that superior technology and established military doctrine made them unbeatable. Now they knew that a species with different ideas about warfare could neutralize their advantages completely. Admiral Krex submitted his resignation from the reptilian hegemony high command, unable to process the psychological trauma of total defeat. His replacement immediately began sending diplomatic overtures to human space, seeking to establish peaceful relations before humanity decided the reptilians represented a continued threat. Hive mind Tal fragmented into smaller collective units as the crystal beings struggled to rebuild their damaged consciousness networks. The collective's confidence in shared thought as the ultimate tactical advantage was shattered, forcing them to develop new approaches to military coordination that incorporated human-style unpredictability. Queen General Zix found herself leading a swarm that could no longer function as a unified organism. The disruption of their coordination networks forced the insects to develop individual initiative, a concept completely foreign to their species. Some viewed this as evolution, while others saw it as the death of their civilization. Phantom Lord Neth barely maintained coherent existence as the ethereal Dominion grappled with the revelation that their phase technology was obsolete. Humans had demonstrated mastery of dimensional warfare that made ethereal stealth capabilities look primitive. The Dominion's entire military strategy required complete reconstruction. Core Admiral Rex entered a logic loop trying to process the contradiction between optimal military theory and human tactical success. The Machine Syndicate's artificial intelligences began incorporating random variables into their decision-making algorithms, attempting to replicate the chaotic creativity that had given humans their victory. Back in human space, Admiral Davis returned to Terra Station where celebrations were notably subdued. The human military leadership understood that their victory had been more than a tactical success. It was a fundamental shift in galactic politics that would require careful management. Humanity had revealed enough power to ensure their safety while maintaining enough mystery to discourage future challenges. Dr. Webb's research teams began analyzing the psychological impact of the demonstration on galactic civilization. The battle had proven that technological superiority was not the only path to military dominance. Adaptive thinking, tactical creativity, and willingness to accept losses in pursuit of strategic objectives could overcome apparently insurmountable odds. The Ghost Fleet returned to quantum fold space, disappearing from normal reality as if it had never existed. Hidden shipyards resumed their clandestine operations while maintaining the illusion that humanity's visible fleet represented their total military capability. The deception would continue, ensuring that potential enemies could never accurately assess human defensive strength. Throughout human space, civilian populations resumed their normal activities with the knowledge that their integration into the defense network had contributed to species survival. The aliens had expected to face a conventional military force and instead encountered an entire civilization that treated warfare as a collaborative effort involving every individual. The galaxy settled into a new equilibrium where humanity's quiet presence in the cosmic community carried implications that no one fully understood. The species that had once been dismissed as primitive newcomers had reminded everyone that evolution could take unexpected paths, and that the most dangerous opponents were often those who appeared least threatening. In the depths of space, human monitoring stations continued their patient watch over galactic communication networks. The message had been delivered and received. Humanity preferred peace but was prepared for any alternative. The galaxy's predators had learned to recognize a more dangerous predator, and the cosmic food chain had been permanently rearranged. The age of galactic arrogance was over, replaced by a new era where assumptions could be fatal, and the quiet species in the corner might have very sharp teeth indeed.